In one of the weirdest political collaborations I never expected to have happen, Trump and Sanders have joined up to do something that could inadvertently hurt your favorite airline and save an airline that you probably don't like very much. The new president, Donald Trump, who would be considered by most people to be a capitalist, is teaming up with Bernie Sanders, who is considered by most people, including himself, to be a socialist. And while I don't discuss politics on my channel because I find it very annoying when people grow a big platform and then once they have that platform they tell you who you should and should not vote for and why, like anybody really cares, but this has to do with aviation, so it's a little bit different. So despite what some people will tell you, the words and the definition of those words matter, so here you have Trump, he's a capitalist, and Sanders, a socialist. And to explain just how different these two guys are, the Oxford Dictionary describes socialism as a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole. Now, regulated by a community can mean a few different things. Your community could be your local neighborhood, but in the terms of world politics and senators and presidents, you're going to talk about community as the United States as a community, and essentially socialism is saying they want that community, let's say the politicians in the government, to just either own it or tell you how you can own it and how to regulate all the different aspects of it. And then everybody shares in the successes. That's essentially what socialism is based off of that definition. I'm not making this up, but it's important that you understand this. Now, capitalism, on the other hand, is an economic and political system in which the country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit. Now I'll let you decide which of those two is the better for everybody in a country and which one stimulates growth and stimulates people to be creative and all that stuff, because I don't discuss those things on this channel. So that's for you to decide, but it just shows how politically different you have. These two guys together are teaming up to do this thing, which in theory sounds amazing, and I think there's some ramifications that maybe people aren't considering. I just saw this tweet from Bernie Sanders saying, "I look forward to working with the Trump administration on fulfilling his promise to cap credit card interest rates at 10%. And I thought, uh-oh. But then he goes on to say, "We cannot continue to allow big banks to make record profits by ripping off Americans by charging them 25 to 30% interest rates. That is usury." Usury is the illegal action or practice of lending money at an unreasonably high interest rate. Define unreasonably high. I guess that's people could say, oh, lending on a house at 5% is unreasonably high, and other people could say it's normal to be at 15%. I've seen both. Cars, same. I think my first car, the guy tried to charge me like 18% or 19% interest rate on that. Is that usury? I don't know. What's unreasonable? If you have no credit and you have low income, define what unreasonable is. So I guess that's how these credit cards are able to do it, because if it was really illegal, then they would probably be sued and they probably wouldn't be able to do what they're doing. Now, it is true that these credit card companies are making ridiculous profit margins. Listen to this Visa and MasterCard executive during the Senate hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on that point about Visa and MasterCard being successful businesses, I think you figured it out, haven't you? I mean, what's your profit margin, Ms. Kirkpatrick?
It's circa 50%.
Mr. Sheedy?
Slightly higher.
It's higher than 50% profit margin?
Slightly higher than MasterCard, yes.
Yeah, that's incredible. 50% profit margin.
In case you didn't catch it, she said her profit margin was about 50%, and he said slightly higher. So you're talking about billions of dollars and making a lot of money. We're not talking about something small. Essentially, that's like saying I spend $100 and then I get $150. That's a huge margin when you're talking about billions of dollars. And while you watch these credit card companies making money hand over fist, it might make you wonder, why is there a pilot sitting in a hotel room talking to me about credit cards and banks? What does that have to do with the airlines? Well, if you've flown on a flight recently, you know that while you're on that flight going to wherever you are, there is magically a special credit card promotion that's not normally offered to everybody, that's being offered to you on this particular flight, and that if you sign up for it, you're going to get a deal. If you spend a certain amount of dollars, I've tuned it all out. But a certain amount of dollars in a certain amount of time frame, you're going to get this deal and you're going to be able to have a one-way free ticket somewhere to go to a place that you definitely need to go check out. And that's because these credit card companies know the more people they can get spending money on a credit card, the more money they're going to make. So what are they going to do? They're going to try to get as many people as they can using credit cards. Now the flight attendants do get a little kickback from this, which makes sense. They're doing extra work, and so why not? I mean, they have to do their normal jobs, they have to do all their safety jobs, they have to do all the other things, and then they do this, and it's an optional thing. They aren't required to do it, but if they do it and it does work, they get a kickback, and I think that that's fair. But the credit card companies are doing it because they need it to happen. They need more people using credit cards, but you know who else needs it? The airlines. The airlines need the flight attendants to do this because they get money from the banks by using and partnering with them. I recently did a video and I went through all the financials of United, American, and Delta, and I showed their profit numbers as an airline. And they were losing billions of dollars a year. And that's billions with a B. Since the airlines started making these deals with the credit card companies, they were making profits in the billions, because they were getting so much from these banks in order to sell these credit cards to people. And luckily for the banks, there's a lot of people who are very irresponsible with their money, and that is shown right here by this graph. This graph shows the amount of credit card debt that people have started to stack up since the year 2000. People are living way beyond their means. As everything went crazy with inflation, nobody changed their lifestyle. They said, oh wow, that's 15% more, that's terrible, I'll discharge it. Instead of cutting back or doing other things, they just kept living the way they were living, and they kept seeing things, thanks to social media, people going places and doing things, and they're like, I need to do that. Not, I think I should save up to go do that thing. No, I need to go do that now. And so what did they do? They discharged it, and they went on that trip, or they went on that cruise because they thought, I need to get on this 20-day cruise to go to this remote island because I need to see quokkas. And I hope I'm saying that right. I've never actually seen them. They're on this like remote island off the west coast of Australia. They seem pretty cute. I don't know if it's worth thousands and thousands of dollars to get there to go see them, but okay, fair enough. So there are people spending money like that. So if Trump and Sanders team up and they put together this plan and say, hey, we're going to cap the credit cards at 10%, what does that really mean? What's the impact for you? Because I ride on these flights all the time. I don't know how long it's been since I paid for my own ticket, but I see the ticket prices because I'm always booking flights. At our airline, we do a lot of commercial deadheads to either get to work or get home, or sometimes something happens and you need to get a commercial flight. So sometimes you'll look to see what a flight might work better for your sleep schedule. So I see what the airfares are, and they're pretty expensive, right? But what will happen if this deal with Trump and Sanders goes through? Well, first, banks aren't going to be making all of this filthy amounts of money that they're making right now. And that means they won't be doing deals with the airlines where they're getting $7 billion a year. Well, if that goes away, what else might happen? Well, the airlines aren't just going to go like, oh, shucks, I guess we're just going to not make billions of dollars this year. That's not what's going to happen. Your airfare is going to go through the roof. Your low-cost carriers like Spirit, JetBlue, Frontier, they have been struggling to compete with the big three, Delta, United, American, because those big three have been having airfares similar in price to these low-cost carriers. And those big three have a lot higher overhead. They tend to have bigger management and a lot of other things. So that huge overhead is going to exist regardless of what's going on, which means if they stop getting billions of dollars, those airlines are going to have to raise their fees a lot. Now, your Spirit airline, people aren't fighting over each other to get that Spirit miles. And that's not a dig on Spirit. I used to jump seat on them all the time back in the day. I loved it. They were always super sweet gate agents, super sweet crews. They were always the nicest to me. And I even rode on them, not in uniform from time to two. Before I had jump seat capabilities, I've ridden on them before. And I didn't really have a problem. I mean, you're paying like $100 to go somewhere, whatever. You're going to get what you pay for. You could be on a Greyhound bus, which would have been where you would have been 20 years ago. However, That is how they used to compete, and Spirit isn't getting all those billions of dollars like some of the other airlines are. Airline tickets have been on a long-term downward trend for the last 40 years, yet everything else seems to be getting wildly more expensive. Now, if airline tickets go back where they start compensating for the actual price as compared to everything else over the last 40 years, things are really going to change. You're no longer going to be able to hop on a flight coast to coast for like $150, which I've made comments about in several videos, and people go, I dare you to find me a price, and I can find them all day. Just go ahead and Google it, you know? Anyway, those airfares are going to go through the roof, and you're going to be paying a lot of money because it costs a lot of money to move a $200 million aircraft. Jet fuel, insurance, payments on that, flight crew, ground crew, landing fees. There is a lot that goes onto it. So people have been flying all over the place going like, ooh, $130, I'm going here to here. Like, it's cheaper on that than it is on a train or a bus. Like, I couldn't even understand, it didn't even make any sense to me. How is it that car prices have like gone up 10 times in the last 40 years, yet your airfare has gone down? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So just realize when you see Trump and Sanders teaming up on this and they're talking about this, there's going to be some really bad repercussions if this goes through. And I'm not saying one side or the other because I don't carry any credit card debt. That's just not the way I live. I save for what I need. I use my credit card all the time for everything, but I pay it off. I make a budget. I have some financial responsibility. That's just how I've chosen to organize my life. But if you take that away, and I'm not saying that it should be taken away or it should be capped or shouldn't be capped, that's not my decision to make. But if you take away those billions of dollars, as the saying goes, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. There's a lot of people saying like, yeah, I've heard these airline pilots like, yeah, that should be capped and this and that. And then when I go, okay, if that happens, let me just show you what your job at the airlines for X airline, because the guy I was talking to worked at a specific airline, what your job at X airline is going to look at, because your airline is losing billions of dollars and they're only afloat and you only have a job and your airline's only making profits because of the billions of dollars that you're getting from these credit card companies. So I go through and I explain it all. And then what do they say? Well, yeah, I don't know if they should cap it at 10% because everyone's all rah-rah until they realize that it's affecting their pocketbook. So one way or the other, the banks, who are the ones that have the money and the credit cards, they're going to make money no matter what. My concern is that if you have something happen that now all of a sudden the airlines stop making money, you're talking about tens or hundreds of thousands of people that have jobs, not just pilots, but ground crew, ground handlers, all these other people that are involved in the airline, ticket agents, all these people. If the airfare goes out through the roof, as it should be, and according to inflation and everything else, then you're going to have a whole other situation of things that are going to change. So when you make big changes, you move one thing, other things happen as a result. You don't need to go to a fancy school or know all the right people to get a good education on finances, though. I wish more people would do reading on something like that. And that is why I love this clip from Good Will Hunting.
See, the sad thing about a guy like you is in 50 years, you're going to start doing some thinking on your own, and you're going to come up with the fact that there are two certainties in life. One, don't do that. And two, you dropped 150 grand on a fucking education you could have got for $1.50 in late charges at the public library.
You don't need money to be classy. You don't need money to be educated on finances. You can go read those. You don't have to have late fees. You can go literally sit in the library for free and read them. Tell your local library you want a book to come. Now, that's coming from me. And something I've never talked about was when I went to high school, I was probably at an elementary school reading level. I hate reading, but more than hating of reading, I hated the idea of living in poverty and not having the things that I wanted. So I decided, well, if I wanted to do better on finances, I should probably learn about finances. And so those are the things that I can read. You will never, ever see me reading a book for fun, despite some of my friends, they'll be like, please read this book, it's so great. And it's like, oh, witches and potions. I literally can't do it. No matter how much I try, I just cannot do it. I've tried to do it for pleasure. I have a friend of mine, she's begging me to read this book, and it's something about pilots and like a love story, and I was just like, 4 minutes, that's all I could do. I literally cannot do it. But I didn't want to be poor, and so I thought, I'm going to educate myself on finances, and I have read, and by read I mean listen to, a ton of audiobooks. So here's what's going to happen in my prediction if all this starts to go through. Airline tickets soar. tickets soar and the demand is going to go down. And the credit cards will probably start getting more stingy on who they give credit card limits to, because if you start making it so you can only charge up to 10%, they're not going to have those people who are normally delinquent that have these big credit card charges that they're able to make a lot of money on. You're going to have a lot of people like me who use credit cards for some transactions but don't ever hold a balance, and that's really where they make their money. So now they're making a lot less money. They stopped giving all this money to these airlines. The airlines stop getting billions of dollars. The airline ticket fees go way up. The demand goes way down. And now you have a lot of people who aren't getting jobs flying. And the airlines start to slow down. Now, from 2001 to 2013, it was kind of like that. It was like impossible to get a job. If you weren't in an airline at that point, it was really bad. From 9/11 till about 10 years ago. Very hard to get a job. In the last 5-6 years, everybody wants to be not everybody wants to be a pilot. Lots of people decided they wanted to be a pilot. I just talked to a regional guy yesterday. He came up to me and started talking to me in Houston, and he said, yeah, I just did my first flight doing OE. And I said, oh man, that's great. Congratulations. What airline are you at? And he told me. I'm not going to call him out, but he said, yeah, it's great. I said, oh, I thought you lived on the West Coast. Why'd you pick an airline that's only on the East Coast? And he said, I was just happy to have a job. I was like, wow, things have changed so quick, because like 2 years ago, it's like anybody and everybody could go get a job at the regionals or even at a Legacy. And that party seems to be stopping, and this thing isn't even in play yet, just because the economy is kind of shifting. So now you have all these pilots that are trained that aren't able to get jobs and have a bunch of debt that they're having to service and aren't able to get jobs. So when you're out saying, oh, I love this thing, you just have to realize the overall implications and how it's going to impact every other sector of this world. Because you might be pilot in command of your Airbus A320 today, and if your airline furloughs 5,000 people, you might end up being pilot in command of greeting people at Walmart. And you might see me there, because if my airline stops flying boxes for all the people that are spending all these things, then I might be there too. Who knows? I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.